Alright, so I just recorded a cover for the song Diamond Eyes by Deftones, and I kind of wanted to go over some recording techniques and tips that helped me, that I learned from various sources, and things that might help you guys. I'm not a professional by any means, but I do enjoy recording, and I think I might have some helpful tips, especially as far as covers are going. So let's do it in order. So I'll go over stuff outside of your amp, outside of your actual DAW and the mix. We'll start with just the guitar. This song was recorded on an 8-string guitar, so we went ahead and recorded it on an 8-string. This is an Ibanez RG8. It's pretty much bone stock. The only thing that's been done to it recently has been just a setup. I've done a little bit of a truss rod adjustment, adjusted a couple of the saddles, and I gave it some new strings. Those things are going to go like, miles. It's really not a lot of work, but it will really help your tone a lot, especially as far as new strings go. I know some people, me especially, I don't restring very often, unless I'm recording. If I'm recording, then I always try to restring to something new. These were done 2 days ago, so they're still pretty new, so I didn't feel the need to restring before I even recorded this. They're still pretty new, and they're good strings. They're Diodario XLs. I think it's 10 to 50, no, 10 to 64, I think. I'd have to look at the package. I have a pack of 7-string set for the 7-string, but I don't know, I don't remember what this lowest one is. But I think 64, if I would have to guess. I didn't clip them. I'm a bit annoying. I didn't clip them. So setup, new strings, that goes a really long way. Like way more than you would imagine, especially the strings. I also have this little piece of fabric going across here. It's actually a headband because I didn't know where my actual fret wrap was, so I kind of improvised it because I didn't want to look for it. I got sick of looking for it. All this does is it's actually a piece of fabric just behind the nut, you can see. All it does is mute the harmonics that ring out. This is especially a problem as far as 8 strings are concerned and extended range guitars, just because of the extra strings and whatnot. The tension's a little different. When you're playing really hard, especially heavy guitars, your harmonics are just going to ring out up there. So fret wrap can really help tighten things up. And then, I guess picking, a couple things to be mindful of when you're playing, especially if you're recording heavier guitars, is going to be your picking and your muting. Where are you palm muting and how hard are you picking? I pick really fucking hard for some of these parts, and that's a lot of the tone. That's a lot of that gain and breakup is just from me picking really fucking hard. And then I also mute pretty low for the most part because I like that. I like the palm mute to ring out a little bit. If you need that barkier, kind of more scratchy one, just palm mute a little higher up. So I got my palm right over the bridge pickup there, and that changes the characteristic entirely. And you can even move around, between phrases for all the like genty shit if you want to do that. But for most of the song, I palm mute pretty low. I just found that sounded the best for this particular case, but be mindful of where you're palm muting, how hard you're picking. Those things go a long way as far as your tone is concerned and the cleanliness of the playthrough. Another trick that I will talk about, and this is another trick that's kind of universal between guitars, and it only requires one thing, and it's a very cheap ingredient, and that is going to be a roll of electrical tape. So what this does, I believe I got this tip from Joey Sturgis, like a very old video from Joey Sturgis. But what you would do, say the breakdown part for this song, the kind of, that part, it's kind of tough to palm mute. This is a very wide neck, and you kind of end up hitting these high strings when you don't mean to. So a way to kind of eliminate that and get the exact sound you're wanting to while being able to pick as hard and expressively as you can, or as you want to, is by taking a piece of electrical tape. Don't wrap them around the strings because then they're going to be a bitch to get off. Just do one strip across whatever strings you aren't playing. So for this, I'm only playing up to this like A. So from D to my high E, I had a piece of tape running just down that. Made sure it's fastened nicely, and I was able to pick really hard for those parts, and it came across really well in the tone. So those are the things happening outside of the mix. This is just playing and setup. And it really wasn't a whole lot to do. This is already a really good guitar. Highly recommend it. It's a very good budget 8-string, so if you're wanting to get into extended ranges, 7 and 8 strings, Ibanez Standard Series is really the way to go. They're fucking great. Um, so that's that as far as outside. Let's move over to the actual computer, and I'll kind of show you guys what's going on the tone side, and then we'll move on to the DAW and the mix and what. Okay, boom. We are here over at the computer now. I may or may not add a face cam. We'll see how I feel about it. We have the DAW open here. Let's do tone first because that's kind of the order of things here. So let's move over to the pod edit. Okie dokie. Here on pod edit. This is where I did the tones. I'm using a Line 6 Pod Go for all the tones in the song. And then there's a little bit happening in the DAW, but really not much outside of levels and panning. So let's talk about how I got to this tone. There is some tutorials on YouTube, and some of them are quite good. I really enjoyed a couple of them, found them to be very helpful. But a way I go about recreating tones is I usually just watch rig rundowns, or I read interviews. You can find interviews online really easily. So that's one way. So YouTube and rig rundowns and interviews. Those three are generally how I get most of it. And then I'd say that's probably 70%. I'd say the last 30% is just mixing by ear and seeing how I feel about the sounds that I'm getting. So these two expression pedals are not doing anything in this tone. This is pretty much just the ones you see active outside of here. So I'll go through those. So these two aren't doing anything. I do use these sometimes. I use this one mostly. I use it as a whammy pedal. But that's for a different tone. I don't need it for this song at all. So in the preamp section, we have a tube screamer. As you can see, I have a lot of distortion settings in PodGo. They're all really good, honestly. I love a lot of these. You see we got a little OCD pedal here, Maxon, this kind of Earthquaker overdrive, tube screamer, Klon Centaur, and then a lot of these Line 6 specific ones are really cool. Xenomorph Fuzz is cool. Horizon Drive, this is one of my favorites, but I chose not to use it for this tone just because I didn't think it fit very well. The Maxon is a little bit too noisy for me. That's for kind of a different sound that it's just harder for me to dial in. Tube Screamer, everybody knows how to dial a Tube Screamer. For this particular tone, I have the gain at 3, tone at 5, and the level at 10. So that's what sounded good to me. Some people just take the tone or the gain to about maybe 0.5 or 0, and they'll max the tone out and max the level out. And all that does is it kind of tightens up the tone, gets rid of that flub. I didn't think this needed to be tightened up as much with the amp that I'm using. I just kind of like the way this sounds. This is, again, just by ear, so I'll kind of show you. So this is what it sounds like without the tube screamer. So you can see it's a little bit thin. It's really not like anything out of this world. But when we add that tube screamer, it really gives it a boost, and it tightens the tone up a little bit. So that's why I chose tube screamer. I know some other people choose different pedals for this. Tube screamer is almost always a good option. Just by default, I find it to be always one that works and works with the sound really well. You could use the Horizon Drive. I really like the Horizon Drive, but I consider that more of a modern metal, djenty tone kind of pedal. You can use it in a lot of ways, but that's what I use it for. It really, really tightens up sounds, and it has a noise gate built in, which is one of the reasons that I love it. This is the pedal by Misha Mansour's company from Periphery, so that's kind of where they get that characteristic from. But yeah, we're using Tube Screamer. My second pick would probably be the Horizon Drive, but we use a Tube Screamer just because I like the way it sounds. For the this is a Friedman like BE type amp. So it's kind of like a Marshall, but more catered towards metal and high gain tones. This is the amp that Mastodon used for a long time. They might still use them. I think Toast Nabasi uses the preamp pedals, the Friedman BEOD. So there's a lot of guys. These are used in a lot of contexts, but mostly that modern metal kind of tone. But it still has that Marshall-y plexi kind of sound. So I like it for that. It's just tighter. with those high gain tones, it just, like, you could mistake that for even a 5150 in some instances, but it still has that kind of low end, I feel like I'm hearing, that you get from Marshalls. So I liked it for that. You can use other amps for this. 5150 is never a bad choice if you're doing any metal tone. The 5150 is a tremendous amplifier, and it's used on everything. I love them. I use them for a lot of tones as well. But for this, I went with the Friedman. One reason, on top of the other reasons, is that Stephen Carpenter, the guitarist for Deftones, used to use Marshall JCM 900s a lot, especially in the early albums. He went to amp modeling after a while, but he does have a history with Marshalls and that Marshall-y sound. And he runs a shit ton of gain. So I kind of just chose what amp could run a shit ton of gain and be okay that also has that Marshall-y characteristic. One of the tutorials for the kind of tone we're looking for used the German Ubersonic. That's a good one. It just sounded a little thin to me, and I didn't like it as much. As you can kind of hear with that drive pedal, it's pretty full, even before any layering or anything like that, and I like that. I like that in a tone a lot, so I kept the Friedman BE style amp head. That was just what I liked for this. But you can see we have a ton of options, and Stephen Carpenter is kind of a gear guy, so he moves around a lot. You got Soldano type amps and shit in here, purple channels, whatnot, Engel Fireball, whole lot of really good ones. And then these Line 6 specific amps, I also have a lot of luck with. They're really, really good. My favorite is the Line 6 Badonk. That might sound familiar to some of you guys. In Pod Farm, this amp was called the Line 6 Big Bottom, and it is kind of associated with Viltarta, which is, they use that amp a ton on the early album. So if you go back and listen to that, you're probably hearing the Line 6 Badonk / Big Bottom sound, which is what a lot of my rhythm tones are based on that I use just for my own stuff. So you can always, experiment and see what you like. For me, this was the one I liked. Okay, cabinet. I used 3 different cabinets, 4 different, I guess, total, on this whole cover. But the main one is going to be this Res Psycho X. This is a free IR. If you look it up, like the Psycho IR pack or whatever, it's free to download. I have not a lot in here. These are all free IRs, though. So if you see them and you want to try them out, go ahead and look them up. And they're probably online for free still. I'm not really sure what the Res Noxious and Psycho pack are supposed to be emulating. Again, this was just me kind of hearing them and deciding that's what I liked. These bottom 3, I believe, are based off of the Periphery 3 Zilla cabinets. Vintage 30s. I think they're mic'd up with SM57s or something like that. These ones are they're from a Keon Hushman video. So, again, these are also a free one. Try them all out and see what you like. For me, Psycho X is my favorite IR that I have right now. It's one that I really like. So the ones I use for this whole cover, though, I use the Psycho Res X, Psycho Res 9, and the Res Psycho 5. I use those. That's the IRs I use. Cab Sim, I use the Cali V30 for a couple parts in the song, but most of it's IR. And I just find they sound better. Especially with the Pod Go. The Pod Go, the IRs just end up sounding really good. So that's kind of that. We'll kind of cycle through the ones we use. So this is the Psycho X. Okay, this is the Psycho 9. See, it kind of got that. It's got that more lo-fi kind of sound to it, and I like that for layering. You get a lot of that stuff. 5, same deal, I think. Or no, this one's closer to X, I believe. Yeah, this one's closer to X. So, some fun stuff there, and then we'll go over the cab sim too. Why not? I didn't touch any of the settings on this. It's all just the default settings. That's that. It's kind of got that more high end on it that I like. It's good for layering. And I use that for my center layer, which I'll show you guys on the DAW when we get to that. The first actual effect pedal I would say, outside of the distortion that I have on here, is a room reverb. These are the settings. You don't have to be exact with it. These are just the settings I used. I only kick this on for the chorus, and I will show you guys why. So when we're playing this this part, it sounds good. This room reverb is just going to widen that sound out a little bit and give it that. It's going to widen the stereo sound out a bit. At least that's how it sounds in my opinion. Kind of see what I'm saying. It sounds like you're in a room. It's a room reverb. It just gives you a little extra something to put in there, and I like that. We have an empty FX block. I have a parametric EQ. This is always on. It's not a boost or anything. This is just shaping the sound. These settings are copied from one of the tutorials that I watched. I'll go ahead and link it for you guys so you guys can look at that video and kind of get your own tips from that as well. This noise gate also is always on. I don't know why I have it off there. Again, this just tightens up the sound. I have a lot of gain running through this. Not the most gain, but enough to where it could lead to a hum if I turn it off. You hear it just barely. It's probably not coming through in here, but this just, again, it's those frequencies you don't hear that when they're in the mix, you do hear them and you can't quite pinpoint them. So to eliminate all those kind of invisible frequencies that muddy up the sound, we throw a noise gate on there right after the EQ, and that kind of helps me tighten up the playing a little bit as well. That's pretty much the whole tone. As you see, I don't have any other patches for that here. So that's the walk through the tone. Those are the only things I do to it throughout the song. Let's move over to the DAW, and I'll kind of talk you through what the mixing portion of it looks like. Okay, cool. So we are back in business here. So we just went over the tone and how I got that, how we got to that point. Now let's get over the actual mix. Not really much going on here, but what made it sound good on this track. So this top track is just a backing track, so we'll listen to that real quick. So you hear that's all just bass, vocals, and some synths. All the guitars are me. I found this on YouTube. It's hard to find for every song, especially the more niche bands you get, but for Deftones is popular, so you can find isolated tracks pretty easily for the most part. Here, let's start with this main riff and how we mixed that, how we went about that. So on the master bus, or not master bus, the bus for the main riff guitars, I just have this instance of TDR Nova. This is a free EQ, basically. It's kind of like poor people's fab filter. I have a high pass and a low pass, ducking some of the low mids, raising some of the high mids. Very slight, not a whole lot going on. All this low and high pass is doing is getting rid of those frequencies that aren't very audible necessarily, but when they're in the mix, they clash and they get cluttered and it muddies up the mix. So I just have that cleaning up the ends. This is almost the same EQ curve for every single track that has this. I only have one other EQ curve that I use, and it's a variation of this, just done a little bit differently. So that is going to be the EQ going on here in the master for these three, or the bus for the main guitars, I should say. So we'll listen to each of these in solo, and then I'll put them together and then put them with the track, and you guys can kind of hear what's going on. This is the main riff panned hard left for the most part. It's actually panned 88%. I don't always pan 100% left, 100% right. Sometimes I pan 80, 70% one way. Just play it by ear. That's what works for me. So let's hear this riff here. So that's pretty tight, right? That's pretty tight, but it is really thin. So if we were to listen to just these two tracks, it just doesn't sound very confident in the mix, if that makes sense. It's not jumping out at you and being aggressive. It's kind of set back there. So even though in this take, I'm picking pretty fucking hard. I pick pretty hard for this part. So let's hear the right one. The right one, what I did was, and this is a trick you can use for double and triple and quad tracking guitars. is I changed the IR. So this first one, the panned left track, is with the Psycho X. This one is with Psycho 9. And then this middle one, I believe, is with the Kali V30 cab sim within the Pod Go. So let's hear the panned right, and we'll put them together here in a second. You guys can hear it. So it's a little more low end, kind of MIDI. I don't even know what to call it. I'm not even going to try. But it's a different characteristic, and it covers up some of the missing characteristics from X. Let's put them together real quick. Boom! Immediately. So that immediately thickens up super, like, a ton when you have that stereo left and right pan. Since we are doing a stereo mix, panning left and right kind of fills out that sound, that field of sound that you kind of subconsciously envision. And then I have one last one here. This is panned straight down the middle, and I have that set up for pretty much all of these. I have one track going straight down the middle. Usually that's reserved for when you're doing a lead and you want that to go kind of split the mix. This, I didn't do it that way for this. This is just it's kind of set back in the mix. As you can see in the fader here, it's quite a bit quieter than these two. These two are doing the heavy lifting. Those thicken it up. This just gives it a little bit more of that scratchy, kind of heavy sound that I like. And I have an EQ on it that's also doing that work for me. So you can see I have it boosting those upper mids. You can't really see it actually. Forget, you guys can't see my VST window. I have an instance in Nova boosting those upper mids quite a bit. Just like the EQ curve we had earlier, just that third band is pushed pretty hard. So let's hear it in solo. This is straight down the middle. See, again, very subtle in the mix altogether, but it's doing something. Let's put it with those three. Damn, see, that thickens it up. Now it's commanding, so let's hear it with the backing track. See, that just thickens it up so much. And then I'll turn on and off this EQ so you guys can actually hear what it's doing on this centered track, and how it's affecting those two left and right guitars. So this is no EQ. This is what it is. It's giving it a little bit of bite, but just enough to mesh with these two. And that just gives it some bark. And that is pretty much these three layers. I'm reusing the whole song for that main riff. For here, this little break part. Same thing. I'm reusing these three. So that's the main riff. That's that bus. Let's move into the chorus. Yeah, same deal. Psycho Res 9, and then I think this one's Psycho 5. So left is Psycho X, right Psycho 5. This one's still Kali V30. And all of these are going to have that reverb pedal turned on that we talked about. Actually, the bottom one might not have it, but the left and right pan ones do. Again, I have them panned about 88% on each side for the chorus guitars, and then one down the middle that's pushed back in the mix a little bit, just like that main riff. It's pushed higher than that, the one for the main riff, but it's still set back there. Here, I'll show it to you guys in solo. So it's not super loud or anything. Let's hear the left and right together in solo. Those two are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. You can hear it immediately. Let's hear it with that third track. It's almost like kicking on a boost pedal with that third track. It's almost like kicking on a more customizable boost pedal. Let's hear it with the mix. So that's pretty good, man. Honestly, that's really not too bad. That is pretty much it for those guitars. I'm just changing cabs, as you can not really see. It's the same EQ curve as the main riff, the left and right guitars. I have that on the bus. It's an instance of Nova. I wish I could make that show up on here. I'll leave a screenshot or something of the EQ curves when I edit this
I'll put a screenshot of them. But that's basically all it's doing. It's just tightening that sound up, getting rid of some of those kind of invisible frequencies, and that's a lot of that. Let's move over to the little breakdown portion. It's over here, and that is the last portion we have here. This is where the tape trick is going to come into effect. So I did tape off from that D to that high E string. That made a lot of difference as far as tightening up this this part, because it's quite hard to mute accurately, especially on the 8 string. You're moving around a lot. If you're trying to kind of groove with it, it's really difficult. But yeah, so I have the Vintage 31, has that EQ curve on it that's boosting those mids a lot, and then Psycho X and Psycho 9 for the left and right channels. Let's hear Just Left real quick. So it's messy and bitey and Velcro-y, and that's just kind of how I liked. That's the take that I liked. There were some kind of neater takes, but I liked how messy this one sounded and how, like, not messy, but how frantic it sounded. It sounded like I was picking really hard, and I liked that. Let's hear the right channel real quick. So that one has more dynamics for sure. You can definitely hear a lot more of the actual notes. It's not as percussive. I feel like those complement each other well, especially with the different IRs that I'm using on that. And then Vintage 30 is going down the middle. Let's hear that with that filter on it. Hello. Am I tweaked? Is it even playing? Am I cooked right now? What the fuck? Okay, well this isn't working. This is bugging out. I think it's bugging out a little bit. Because I could hear it earlier. 100%. But that is doing something, I swear to God. I swear to God it's doing something. I don't know why it's not playing anything now, but it was when I mixed this like an hour ago. But that's what it's doing. Again, we got that kind of 80-80 pan on the left and the right channel, straight down the middle for the V30. That's the guitars. It's really easy. Let's hear it in the context of the mix here. We'll do from the main riff to that chorus, so I'll give you guys a little listen here before I post the playthrough video. And then without the guitars. That's pretty much it. It was really quite easy to record. It did not take long to mix or do. So if you guys are wanting to do a guitar cover kind of in the same vein, those are my tips and tricks for doing that. Kind of preparing for it and doing the mix. As you can see, I only have 3 buses here. This is really not a very complicated mix, and I'm not saying this is the best that I could have done or the best that you could do at all, but it's definitely suitable. It fits the song. It sounds pretty solid, and yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. So hopefully that helps you guys out on your mixing journey. Do whatever you will in this video. Like it, dislike it, constructive criticism. All is welcome. Thanks, guys.